The transport ship was old and slow, sat near the window and watched the stars pass by. She had been traveling for 3 days now. Her body was tired, but her mind was awake. She kept thinking about the job waiting for her at the end of this journey. The space station was not a place many humans wanted to visit. They were known across the galaxy as dangerous predators. They stood over 2 meters tall. They had thick gray fur, sharp claws, and teeth that could tear through metal. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dark. Most species feared them. Most species stayed far away from them. But was not most people. She had worked as a caretaker for refugee children for 7 years. She had worked on many different planets. She had cared for children of all species. Some were small and quiet. Some were large and loud. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had too many eyes, loved them all the same. When the Galactic Refugee Council sent her this assignment, many people told her to refuse. They said the cubs were too dangerous. They said a human could not survive around predator children. They said she would get hurt or worse. Listened to their warnings. Then she packed her bag and got on the transport ship anyway. The ship finally arrived at the station, grabbed her small bag and walked through the docking tunnel. The air inside the station was cold and smelled like metal. The lights were dim. Everything felt heavy and gray. A tall alien was waiting for her at the entrance. He was not. He was a species known for their blue skin and calm voices. He wore the uniform of a station administrator. "You must be the human caretaker," he said. His voice was flat and tired. "I am director. I run this station." "I am," she said with a small bow. "Thank you for having me." Director looked at her for a long moment. His 4 eyes blinked slowly. "I must be honest with you, human. I do not think you will last long here. We have had 6 caretakers before you. None of them stayed more than 2 weeks." Nodded. "I understand. Can you tell me about the cubs?" The director started walking and followed him through the dark hallways. "There are 5 of them," he said. 3 males and 2 females. They are all between 4 and 6 years old in human terms. Their parents died 8 months ago in the border conflict with the Nyx Empire. They have no other family. No one else wanted them." Felt her heart grow heavy. "That is very sad." "It is the reality of war," the director said without emotion. "The cubs do not trust anyone. They do not let anyone come close. They growl and show their teeth to every caretaker we send. The last one ran away crying after just 3 days." They stopped in front of a large metal door. Director pressed his hand against a scanner, and the door slid open with a hiss. "This is their living area," he said. "Food is delivered twice a day. Medical staff come once a week. Other than that, they are alone. They prefer it that way." Stepped into the room. It was bigger than she expected. There were sleeping mats on the floor, some toys scattered around, and a large window showing the stars outside. But the room felt empty and cold. There was no warmth here, no love. At first did not see the cubs. The room seemed empty. Then she heard a soft growl from the corner. She turned slowly and saw them. 5 pairs of yellow eyes were watching her from the shadows. The cubs were hiding behind a pile of blankets and old furniture. Their ears were flat against their heads. Their small lips pulled back to show tiny sharp teeth. They were afraid. Felt a pain in her chest. These were not monsters. These were children. Scared, lonely children who had lost everything. "Hello," she said softly. She did not move closer. She just stood there and smiled. "My name is, I am going to take care of you." The largest cub growled louder. His fur was dark gray, almost black. He pushed himself in front of the others, trying to protect them. "Go away," he said in a small, rough voice. "We do not want you here." Sat down on the floor slowly. She made herself small. "I know you do not want me here," she said gently. "That is okay. I am not going to force you to do anything. I am just going to sit here for a while. Is that okay?" The cubs did not answer. They just kept watching her with their glowing eyes. Stayed there for a long time. She did not move. She did not speak. She just sat quietly and let them look at her. She wanted them to see that she was not a threat. She wanted them to see that she was not afraid of them. After about an hour, Director came to check on her. He looked surprised to see her still sitting on the floor. "You are still here," he said. "Of course," replied. "I told you I would take care of them." The director shook his head. "You are a strange human." Smiled, "Maybe, but I think these cubs need someone strange." That night did not sleep in her own room. She stayed in the corner of the cubs' living area. She wrapped herself in a blanket and closed her eyes. She could hear the cubs moving around in the dark. She could hear their soft breathing. In the middle of the night, she felt something warm near her feet. She opened her eyes slowly. The smallest cub, a female with light silver fur, was sitting a few steps away from her. The cub was not growling. She was just watching. Did not move. She just smiled softly and closed her eyes again. It was a small thing, but it was a start. The next morning, woke up before the cubs. She went to the food delivery area and collected their breakfast. The food was simple, raw meat and some strange purple vegetables. Prepared everything nicely on plates and brought it back to the room. The cubs were awake now. They watched her from their hiding spot as she placed the food in the middle of the room. "Breakfast is ready," said cheerfully. "Please eat when you are hungry." She stepped back and sat down in her corner again. She did not stare at them. She looked at her own small meal, a nutrition bar from her bag, and ate quietly. One by one, the cubs came out of hiding. They moved slowly and carefully, never turning their backs to her. They grabbed the food and pulled it back to their safe corner. But they ate, and that was enough for now. Watched them from the corner of her eye and felt a small hope growing in her heart. These cubs had been hurt by the universe. They had lost their parents, their home, and their trust, but they were still alive. They were still fighting. And was going to fight for them too. 2 weeks passed slowly on the space station. Fell into a simple routine. She woke up early. She prepared food for the cubs. She sat in her corner and waited. She did not push. She did not demand. She just stayed. The cubs were still afraid of her, but something was changing. The smallest one, the silver female, was the bravest. Learned that her name was Lyra. Lyra started sitting closer to each day. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to watch. The other cubs had names too. The large, dark gray male who acted as their leader was called. He was the oldest and the most protective. He always stood between and the others. He always growled when she moved too fast. The two other males were brothers, had brown fur with white spots on his ears. His brother was smaller and had the same brown fur but no spots. They always stayed together and never separated for even a moment. The last cub was a female named Sira. She had beautiful golden fur that was rare among, but Sira never spoke. She never growled. She never made any sound at all. She just watched everything with her sad yellow eyes. Director visited sometimes. He always looked surprised that was still there. "You have lasted longer than anyone else," he said one morning. "But they still do not trust you. They still hide. You are wasting your time." Shook her head. "Trust takes time, especially for children who have been hurt." The director made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You humans are strange creatures. Any other species would have given up by now." "Maybe that is why we are here," said simply. On the 15th day, something special happened. Was sitting in her corner reading a book on her data pad. She liked to read while the cubs played. It made the room feel more normal, more like a home. Suddenly, she felt something touch her knee. She looked down slowly. Lyra was standing right next to her. The small cub was shaking a little, her ears flat with fear, but she had reached out and touched with her tiny clawed hand. Stayed very still. She did not want to scare Lyra away. "Hello, little one," said softly. Lyra did not speak. She just stared at with her big yellow eyes. Then very slowly she sat down next to the human. felt tears forming in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She just smiled and went back to reading her book. She did not try to touch Lyra. She did not try to hold her. She just let the cub sit beside her. From across the room, the other cubs watched with wide eyes, growled softly, but he did not come to pull Lyra away. He just watched. That night, Lyra slept next to. She curled up in a small ball by his feet and closed her eyes. It was the first time any of the cubs had slept near her. Stayed awake for a long time, just watching the small cub breathe. She promised herself she would protect these children no matter what. The days after that were different. Lyra followed everywhere. When prepared food, Lyra sat nearby and watched. When cleaned the room, Lyra tried to help by pushing things around with her nose. When sat down, Lyra sat down too. The other cubs noticed this and started coming closer as well. They did not touch yet, but they stopped running away when she walked past. They stopped growling when she spoke. Even seemed less angry. He still watched with suspicious eyes, but he let Lyra stay close to her. He let his pack members approach if they wanted. Only Sira stayed far away. The golden cub sat alone by the window most of the time, staring at the stars. She never joined the others when they played. She never ate with them. She just existed in her own silent world. Worried about Sira the most, she knew that silence could hide the deepest pain. One afternoon, decided to try something new. She went to the station market and bought some colored papers and drawing tools. When she came back to the room, she sat down in the middle and started folding the paper. The cubs watched with curiosity as her fingers moved quickly. She folded and pressed and shaped the paper until it became something beautiful, a small bird. "This is called origami," said to no one in particular. "It is an art from my home planet. You take flat paper and turn it into anything you can imagine." She held up the paper bird and made it dance in the air. Lyra's eyes went wide with wonder and crept closer to see better. Made more shapes, a star, a flower, a small box. She placed each one on the floor in front of her like little gifts. Was the first to take one. He grabbed the paper star with his mouth and ran back to his brother. They sniffed it and poked it with their noses, making small happy sounds. Lyra picked up the flower and brought it back to. "Make more," she asked in her tiny voice. Smiled widely. "Of course, I will make as many as you want." She spent the whole afternoon making paper shapes while the cubs gathered around her. Even came close to watch, though he pretended he was not interested. He sat a few steps away with his back turned, but could see his ears pointing toward her, listening to everything. By the time evening came, the room was filled with colorful paper creations. The cubs had them everywhere. In their sleeping area, on the window ledge, in small piles they had collected. It was the first time the room felt alive. As cleaned up the leftover paper, she noticed something. Sira had moved from her usual spot by the window. The golden cub was sitting just a little closer to the group. She was still alone, still silent, but she was watching the paper shapes with something new in her eyes. Interest, maybe even want. Took one of the paper birds, the prettiest one she had made, and walked over slowly. Sira tensed up but did not run away. Placed the bird on the floor in front of Sira. "This one is for you," she said softly. "You do not have to take it, but it is here if you want it." Then walked away. She did not look back. Later that night, when everyone was sleeping, opened her eyes and looked toward Sira's corner. The golden cub was curled up in her usual spot, facing the wall. But clutched in her small paws, held close to her chest, was the paper bird. Smiled and closed her eyes. There was still a long way to go, but every small step mattered. Every tiny moment of trust was precious. She was not just their caretaker anymore. She was becoming something more, something these broken children needed desperately. She was becoming their family. A month had passed since arrived at the station. The cubs were different now. They laughed more. They played more. They did not hide in corners anymore. Lyra followed like a shadow. The small silver cub held onto's hand whenever they walked through the station. At night, she slept curled up against side, her soft fur warm and comforting, and had become playful and loud. They chased each other around the room, knocked things over, and made messes that had to clean up. But she did not mind. Their laughter was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. Had finally stopped growling at her. The large cub still watched her carefully, still stood guard over his pack. But sometimes, when he thought no one was looking, he would sit near and let her scratch behind his ears. His tail would wag just a little and would pretend not to notice. Even Sierra was changing. The golden cub still did not speak, but she had stopped sitting alone. She stayed near the group now, always watching, always listening. She kept the paper bird had given her hidden in her sleeping area, safe and protected. Loved these cubs with all her heart. They had become her family. But trouble was coming. One morning, Director called to his office. His blue face looked worried. "We have a problem," he said. "An inspector from the Galactic Refugee Council is coming next week. His name is High Commissioner. He reviews all refugee cases in this sector." Frowned. "Is that bad?" "It could be." The director leaned back in his chair. "Commissioner does not like complicated cases. He prefers to send children to government facilities where they can be managed efficiently. He does not believe in individual caretakers." His blood went cold. He wants to take the cubs away. He will evaluate the situation and make a recommendation. If he decides the cubs are better off in a facility, there is nothing I can do to stop him. Shook her head. "No, those children have finally started to heal. Taking them away now would destroy them." "I know," the director said sadly, "but is powerful. His word is law. The only way to change his mind is to show him something he has never seen before." Left the office with her heart full of fear. She did not know how to stop this. She did not know how to protect her cubs from someone so powerful. When she returned to the living area, she found it empty. The cubs were not in their usual spots. Felt a moment of panic before she heard sounds coming from the bathroom area. She walked quietly toward the door and stopped. The cubs were inside, and they were talking in hushed voices. "No, no, you have to show more teeth." That was his voice, rough and serious. "Like this, see." There was a growling sound, then small giggles. "That is not scary," said. "That is just funny." "Let me try," said. There was another growl, louder this time, followed by more laughter. Pressed herself against the wall and listened, her heart beating fast. "We have to practice more," said firmly. "The bad man is coming, the one who wants to take us away. We heard the director talking about it." His eyes went wide. The cubs had heard about the inspector. "If we scare him enough, he will leave," continued. "He will think we are too dangerous to move. That is what always worked before. The other caretakers ran away because we scared them. We can do the same to this inspector." "But what about?" Lyra's small voice was shaking. "Will we scare her too?" There was a pause. When spoke again, his voice was softer. "No is different. She stays no matter what, but everyone else runs. If we show this inspector our scary faces, he will run too. Then we can stay here, with..." Felt tears rolling down her cheeks. These poor cubs. They thought they had to be monsters to survive. They thought the only way to protect themselves was to make others afraid. She heard shuffling sounds and quickly wiped her face. She walked around the corner and stepped into the doorway of the bathroom. The cubs froze. They were all standing in front of the large mirror on the wall. Was in the center, his lips pulled back to show his teeth, and were beside him, copying his expression. Even Lyra was there, trying to make her small face look scary. Only Sierra stood apart, watching from the corner as always. "What are you doing?" asked gently, pretending she had not heard anything. The cubs looked at each other nervously, his ears flattened. "Nothing," he said quickly. "We were just playing." Walked into the bathroom and sat down on the cold floor. The cubs watched her with worried eyes. "I know about the inspector," said softly. "I know you are afraid." His eyes widened. "We are not afraid, we fear nothing." Smiled sadly. "It is okay to be afraid. Fear does not make you weak. It means you have something precious you do not want to lose." The large cub's ears drooped. He looked down at the floor. "They will take us away," he whispered. "They will put us in one of those places where cubs sit in cages and wait to die. We have heard the stories." Opened her arms. "Come here." Hesitated. He had never let hold him before, but something broke inside him at that moment. The weight of being strong for so long, of protecting everyone, of being scared every single day. It all came crashing down. He walked forward slowly and let wrap her arms around him. Lyra ran over and joined them. Then and piled on, their small bodies pressing close. Even Sira moved. She walked over slowly and sat just outside the hug, close enough to feel its warmth but not quite part of it yet. Held her cubs close and felt their hearts beating against her chest. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "No one is taking you anywhere. I will not let that happen." "But the inspector is powerful," said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "He can do whatever he wants." "Maybe," said, "but he has never met a human before. He does not know what we can do when we are protecting the ones we love." Lyra looked up at her with wet eyes. "What are you going to do?" Kissed the top of her head gently. "I am going to show him the truth. I am going to show him that you are not dangerous monsters. You are children. You are my children, and I will fight for you until my last breath." Pulled back and looked at her with something new in his eyes. Trust, real trust. "You would fight for us?" he asked quietly. Smiled and touched his cheek. "I already am." That night the cubs did not practice scary faces anymore. They slept together in a big pile within the middle. Even Sira lay close by, her golden fur just barely touching his hand. Tomorrow the real fight would begin. The inspector was coming, and had to find a way to convince him to let her keep her family. She did not know if she could do it, but she knew she had to try. For them, for her cubs, for everything that mattered. The day of the inspection arrived too quickly. Woke up early with a heavy feeling in her chest. The cubs were still sleeping around her, their warm bodies pressed close. She looked at each of their faces and felt her heart ache. She would not let anyone take them away. She could not. Carefully moved out of the pile without waking them. She went to the small bathroom, washed her face, and looked at herself in the mirror. She was not a soldier. She was not a politician. She was just a caretaker, a simple human woman who loved 5 orphaned cubs. But sometimes, love was the strongest weapon of all. The cubs woke up nervous and restless, tried to act brave, but could see his tail was stiff and his ears kept twitching, and stayed close together, bumping into each other as they paced around the room. Lyra held onto his hand and would not let go. Sira sat by the window, staring at the stars like always. But today she was clutching the paper bird to her chest, holding it tight. "Remember what I told you," said to all of them. "Just be yourselves. You do not have to pretend to be anything. You do not have to scare anyone." Made a small sound but did not argue. He had promised he would try, but she could see the fear in his eyes. Director arrived at midday. Behind him walked a tall figure in gray robes. High Commissioner was not like any species had seen before. He had pale white skin that looked like paper. His eyes were completely black like 2 empty holes. He had no hair, no expression, nothing that showed any emotion at all. "This is the human caretaker," Director said, gesturing too. "She has been with the cubs for over a month now, the longest any caretaker has lasted." Commissioner looked at with his dead black eyes. "A human," he said. His voice was cold and flat. "I have read about your species. You are considered weak by galactic standards. Soft bodies, no claws, no natural weapons. How did you survive among predators?" Bowed her head politely. "With patience and love, Commissioner." made a sound that might have been a laugh. Love, how sentimental. He looked past her at the living area. Where are the subjects? Did not like that he called them subjects, but she kept her voice calm. The cubs are inside. They are nervous about meeting strangers. Of course they are, said dismissively. Predator children are always unstable. That is why they belong in controlled facilities, not with soft caretakers who think love can solve everything. He pushed past and walked into the living area. Director followed and hurried after them. The cubs were waiting inside. They had arranged themselves in a line, standing shoulder to shoulder. Was in the center, with an on his left and Lyra and Sira on his right. They were trying to look brave, but could see them shaking. Commissioner stopped and looked at them coldly. These are the orphans, he said, like he was examining objects, not children. 5 cubs from the border conflict. No family, no future, a drain on resources. Felt anger burning in her chest, but she stayed quiet. Took a step toward the cubs. Do you know why I am here, children? Growled softly, his lips pulled back just a little. We know, he said, you want to take us away. I want to put you somewhere appropriate, corrected. A facility where you can be monitored and controlled. You are predators. You are dangerous. You do not belong with a weak human caretaker. Something changed in his eyes. All the fear turned into anger. Saw what was about to happen a second before it did. We are not going anywhere, roared. He lunged forward and bared all his teeth. His eyes went wide and wild. His claws came out, scratching the floor as he tried to look as scary as possible. And joined him. They growled and snarled and showed their little fangs. Their fur stood up on end. Even tiny Lyra tried to be scary. She opened her mouth wide and made a sound that was supposed to be a roar but came out more like a squeak. Sira stood frozen, watching everything with her big yellow eyes. The cubs had practiced this. They had rehearsed these scary faces in the mirror. They thought this would save them. They thought they could frighten the inspector away. But Commissioner did not look scared. He looked disgusted. You see, he said to Director, this is exactly what I mean. These creatures cannot be civilized. They respond to everything with violence and fear. They need to be contained. He raised his data pad to make his official report. And that was when moved. She walked forward slowly, right toward the growling cubs. Everyone watched her in shock. Director tried to grab her arm, but she pulled away. What are you doing? Demanded. Get back, they are dangerous. Ignored him, she walked up to first. The large cub was still growling, still showing his teeth, but his eyes looked lost and scared. Kneeled down in front of him. She was not afraid. She had never been afraid of her cubs. She whispered, It is okay, you do not have to fight anymore. His growl faded. His lips closed over his teeth. His whole body started shaking. Leaned forward and kissed his forehead gently. I love you, she said softly. Then she moved too. She kissed his forehead too. I love you. Then another kiss. I love you. Then little Lyra, who had tears running down her furry cheeks, kissed her forehead and wiped her tears away. I love you, little one. Finally she turned to Sira. The golden cub had not tried to be scary. She had just stood there, silent and still. But now she was looking at with something desperate in her eyes. Opened her arms. You too, she whispered, come here. Sira broke. The wall she had built around herself crumbled. She ran forward and threw herself into his arms. A sound came out of her throat, not words but a cry, a deep, painful cry that had been locked inside her for so long. Held her tight and kissed her golden forehead. I love you, Sira. I love all of you. The room went silent. Commissioner stood frozen with his data pad in his hand. His black eyes were wide. His mouth was open. He had seen many things in his long career. He had seen wars and disasters and tragedies across 100 worlds. But he had never seen this. He had never seen a prey species show love to predators. He had never seen a human kiss the foreheads of creatures that could tear her apart. Director was watching too. His 4 eyes were filled with tears. Looked up at the commissioner, still holding her cubs close. "They are not dangerous," she said firmly. "They are children. They are scared and hurt and alone, but they are not monsters. They are my family." Commissioner did not say anything. He just stared at the human woman surrounded by predator cubs. For the first time in his life, he did not know what to write in his report. The room stayed silent for a long time. Commissioner had not moved. His black eyes were fixed on, and the cubs huddled around her. His data pad hung loose in his hand. Held her cubs close and waited. Her heart was pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. She had done everything she could. Now the fate of her family rested in the hands of this cold, emotionless official. Finally spoke. His voice was strange. It was softer than before, almost confused. "In 300 years of service," he said slowly, "I have never seen anything like this." He looked down at his data pad. Then he looked back at, "You know what they are capable of, human. Every species in the galaxy knows. They are apex predators. They have fought wars across star systems. A single adult can kill a dozen soldiers." Nodded, "I know. And yet you walked toward them when they were showing aggression. You put yourself in danger. You kissed them." His voice held something that might have been wonder. "Why?" Looked at the cub still pressed against her body. Had buried his face in her shoulder. Lyra was gripping her arm, and were tangled together against her side. And Sira, silent Sira, was still holding tight, her body shaking with quiet sobs. "Because they needed someone to love them," said simply. "That is all any child needs. It does not matter if they have claws or fur or sharp teeth. Inside, they are just children who want to be safe and loved." Was quiet again. He looked at Director, who was still wiping tears from his 4 eyes. Director said, "In your opinion, has this human been a good caretaker for these cubs?" Nodded quickly. "The best we have ever had, Commissioner. Before she came, no one could get near them. They were wild and scared and violent. Now look at them." He gestured at the pile of cubs holding onto. "They trust her completely. She has given them something no one else could." Looked at his data pad one more time. His fingers moved over the screen, but could not see what he was writing. "I came here today prepared to recommend immediate transfer to a Category 5 facility," he said. "It is standard procedure for orphan predator species. They are considered too dangerous for individual care, too risky for public safety." His arms tightened around her cubs. She felt tense up, ready to fight again if needed. "However," continued, and his voice changed again. It became something almost warm. "Standard procedure exists because we have never seen an alternative. We have never seen a case where a predator species formed genuine bonds with another species, especially not a species like humans." He lowered his data pad. "I have studied your kind, human. I know humans are considered physically weak by galactic standards. You have no claws, no armor, no venom. On paper, you should not survive contact with any predator species." Said nothing, she just waited. "But the records also show something strange about humans," continued. "You keep forming bonds with dangerous creatures. On your home world, you domesticated wolves and turned them into pets. You swim with sharks. You rescue injured predators and release them back into the wild. You show compassion to things that could kill you." He paused and looked directly at with his black eyes. "I did not understand this behavior before. I thought it was foolishness. But now I think I understand." "What do you understand?" asked softly. "You do not see monsters," said. "Where other species see danger and threat, you see potential for connection. You see children who need love, not beasts who need cages." He shook his head slowly. "It is remarkable, and perhaps it is exactly what the galaxy needs." He typed something on his data pad and pressed a button. A soft chime sounded. "I am filing my official report now," he announced. "Based on my observations, I am recommending that the 5 orphans remain in the care of their current guardian, the human. Furthermore, I am recommending that she be granted permanent legal guardianship under Galactic Refugee Code 7, Section 12. His breath caught in her throat. Permanent. Yes, nodded. These cubs are no longer wards of the Galactic Refugee Council. They are your children, human, legally and officially. Lifted his head from shoulder. His yellow eyes were wide with disbelief. We can stay with forever. Forever, confirmed. No one will ever try to separate you again. I will make sure of it. Lyra burst into tears of joy and started howling happily, their tails wagging so hard their whole bodies shook. Even the strong one, the protector, had tears running down his furry face. And Sira spoke. Thank you, she whispered. Her voice was small and rough from not being used for so long, but it was there, real words from the silent cub. Everyone turned to look at her in shock. Sira looked up with her golden eyes. Thank you, she said again, louder this time. Thank you for choosing us. Could not hold back anymore. She cried freely as she pulled Sira close. I will always choose you, she said through her tears. Always. The news spread across the station quickly. By evening, everyone knew about the human who had adopted 5 predator cubs. Other aliens came to the living area just to see it with their own eyes. They stood in the doorway and watched, playing with her children, making paper shapes and laughing together. They could not believe what they were seeing. Director stood beside Commissioner as they watched the scene. This will change things, said quietly. Other species will hear about this. They will wonder if humans can bond with their dangerous orphans too. Nodded slowly. Perhaps that is exactly what should happen. We have tried fear and control for thousands of years. We have built cages and facilities and systems designed to contain dangerous species, but maybe we have been wrong. He watched kiss the top of his head as the large cub pretended to be annoyed, but secretly wagged his tail. Maybe what the galaxy needs is not more cages, said. Maybe what we need is more humans. Months later, a report was published by the Galactic Refugee Council. It described the successful integration of orphans with a human guardian. It included pictures of surrounded by her cubs, all of them smiling and healthy and loved. The report spread across 1,000 worlds. Other species read it with wonder and confusion. They could not understand how a weak human had tamed dangerous predators with nothing but patience and love. But the humans who read it just smiled. They understood perfectly. Because humans had always known the truth. Monsters were not born. They were made by loneliness and fear and pain. And the best way to defeat a monster was not with weapons or walls. It was with a soft voice, a warm hug, and a kiss on the forehead. On the space station, tucked her 5 cubs into bed. They were getting bigger now, but they still liked to sleep in a pile with her in the middle. On one side, Sira on the other, Lyra curled at her feet and tangled together nearby. Good night, my loves, whispered. Good night, mother, they answered together. The word made her heart swell with joy. Mother. She had never expected to be called that, but now she could not imagine her life any other way. She closed her eyes and listened to her children breathe. Outside the window, the stars sparkled in the endless darkness of space. Smiled and let herself drift to sleep. She was home, and so were they. Finally, after everything, they were all home.